What if everything you believed about honor, loyalty, and family was turned on its head in one bloody, fiery moment? What if the most honorable man in Westeros did the unthinkable, not out of love, not out of fear, but because he believed it was the right thing to do? It begins with a single decision, a heartbeat, a blade not drawn. The same moment that in our known timeline ended in fire and blood, this time it pivots. Instead of storming the Red Keep with Robert's wrath burning in his chest, Eddard Stark hesitates. He stands at the gates of the capital with his bannermen behind him, smoke rising from the city as panic and fear echo in the wind. But when the gates open, he doesn't find madness. Not yet, not fire, not screams. Just Sir Jaime Lannister, sword drawn, blood on his armor, and a look in his eyes that warns of something worse than war. Only this time, Ned doesn't arrive after the killing. This time he arrives before it. "Your king is mad," Jaime had said once, years later, with wine in his hand and bitterness in his mouth. But now Ned stands in the throne room, alive and present, as King Aerys commands wildfire barrels to be placed beneath the city. He watches it happen. And still he chooses not to draw steel. Why? Because in this version of the story, Rickard Stark and Brandon are still alive. Aerys never burns them. Their journey to King's Landing ended in threats, not fire. The Mad King, still paranoid but restrained by Tywin's looming presence, had imprisoned them instead, kept them as bargaining tools, and that changed everything. So when Robert Baratheon's rebellion marches south, Ned isn't just a friend defending a cause. He's a brother, a son, a hostage's bloodline, and Aerys knows it. He offers Ned a deal. "Protect your king," the madman says, "and your family lives. Fail me, and I will feed your brother to the flames myself." Ned doesn't trust him. No sane man would. But the risk of failure, of letting Robert sack the city, of letting Rhaegar's children die, of letting his own family perish screaming, is too high. He bends the knee. And in that single act, Ned Stark condemns the rebellion. Oh, and here's where it gets insane. Robert doesn't understand. He hears the news from ravens, not from Ned. And when he learns that the Starks have aligned with the Targaryens, he loses it. "Ned Stark is dead to me," he roars in Storm's End, smashing his goblet into the stone wall. He's no brother. He's a traitor! But Robert doesn't stop marching. No, he marches faster. Blood in his eyes, vengeance in his heart. He believes Lyanna is still a prisoner, that Rhaegar took her by force. That Aerys, mad and rotting on the throne, would never let her go. And now Ned defends them? With the North. The battle lines change. Instead of Ned and Robert fighting side by side at the Trident, they face each other from opposite banks. The northern host is smaller, but it's fresh, disciplined, led by Stark bannermen, commanded by a man who was trained to fight, not drink. Robert is savage, furious, but isolated. Stannis and Renly remain loyal, but others begin to doubt. The war fractures, and in the shadows Tywin Lannister waits. 3 days before Robert reaches King's Landing, Rhaegar returns from the Tower of Joy, and he brings Lyanna with him, alive, safe, not kidnapped. And not pregnant. Pause. Did you just shiver? Because this moment breaks everything. Imagine Robert's face when he sees Lyanna riding behind Rhaegar, not in chains, not beaten, but smiling, alive, loyal, and worst of all, in love. His sword drops, his will shatters. His rage doesn't just turn outward, it turns inward. He's been lied to, used, manipulated by whispers and his own obsession. And now the realm is on fire because of it. But wait, it gets worse because Rhaegar is not his father. And when he sees the destruction brewing, the wildfire casks being rolled beneath the city, he confronts Aerys. Not with a challenge, but with a solution. "End this," he says. "Let me rule. Let me clean your mess." And Aerys laughs, screams, shakes in fury. He calls his son a traitor, orders him executed on the spot. Except this time Ned is there, watching, listening, standing by the throne wearing Targaryen colors, sworn to defend the king, but unsure which king. And this is the moment. Right here, when history pivots on a blade's edge, Rhaegar draws his sword, Jaime draws his, the king screams for wildfire, and Ned finally chooses. He steps between them. Okay, hold up, just take a breath, because what happens next? You're not ready. This isn't a battle. It's a massacre of loyalty, identity, and everything Ned Stark believes in. He tries to talk them down, Rhaegar, Jaime, the pyromancers. But Aerys doesn't wait. He screams for wildfire to burn them all, and one of the pyromancers moves toward the levers. So Ned, who only moments ago swore to protect the king, kills him. A clean strike. One blow. Aerys is dead before he hits the ground. Jaime freezes. Rhaegar stares. The pyromancers scream, and the room goes silent. It wasn't Jaime Lannister. It was Eddard Stark who killed the Mad King. And guess what? No one sings songs about it, because within hours the city is in chaos. Half the court believes Rhaegar ordered it. The other half thinks Ned wants the throne. And Robert never sees any of it, because at that same moment, broken and betrayed, he takes his own life before he reaches the city. Yup, let that sink in. Robert Baratheon dies not in glory, not in fire, not at the hands of a dragon, but in the silence of heartbreak. A dagger to the belly alone. And the 7 kingdoms, oh, you better believe they spiral. Oh, you better believe they spiral. The silence after Aerys's death didn't last. 1 breath. 2. Then came the screaming. The pyromancers shrieked in horror, stumbling over each other to flee the throne room. Sir Jaime Lannister stood frozen, white cloak stained with the blood of the king he'd sworn to protect. Rhaegar dropped to his knees beside his father's body, his silver-gold hair falling like a curtain over his face as he trembled, and Ned Stark, quiet, grim, covered in ash and blood, lowered his sword. No one spoke, because how could they? The man who was supposed to be the realm's conscience had just become its executioner. I had no choice, Ned muttered, but no one responded. His voice sounded hollow, like it didn't belong to him anymore. The truth was, he did have a choice, and now the 7 kingdoms would pay for it. Word of the Mad King's death spread faster than wildfire. In the streets of King's Landing, the people celebrated at first. Bells rang. Merchants handed out free wine. Mothers lifted children onto their shoulders and whispered, "The dragon's gone." But the celebrations didn't last. By nightfall, the city was under siege, not by Robert Baratheon, but by fear. Half the Gold Cloaks swore loyalty to Prince Rhaegar. The other half defected, unsure of who had the right to rule now. Aerys was dead, yes, but he died at the hands of a Northman, and the North had joined the Targaryens only days before. To the Southern Lords it looked like a coup, and in Dragonstone a raven reached Queen Rhaella. She dropped the letter the moment she read it. Aerys dead. Rhaegar declared king. Ned Stark, the sword that ended her husband's reign. Her handmaiden asked if she was well. She smiled, and then said something no one expected. "Then I shall return to King's Landing, with my son, Viserys." The boy was only 6, but Rhaella knew what power looked like, and she saw a storm brewing. She had been a wife to a madman, but never a queen to a king. That would change now, and she wasn't coming alone. Behind her, ships prepared to sail, loyalists, stormlords, pirates paid in gold and promised titles. Rhaella would not be cast aside like ash. She would fight for her son's claim, even if it meant burning the new king's throne to the ground. Meanwhile, in the Riverlands, a storm broke over Riverrun. Hoster Tully's cup slipped from his hand as he read the Raven. "Your betrothed has slain the king," he whispered to Catelyn. "For the North has betrayed the realm." Cat blinked, stunned. No, Ned would never think, but the ink didn't lie. Nor did the words, "By Lord Eddard's blade, Aerys Targaryen is no more." Brandon and Rickard Stark were still in Aerys's dungeons. Or so everyone thought. But now that Aerys was dead, the question hung heavy over the realm. Would Rhaegar free them, or keep them as leverage? Catelyn paced her chambers that night, heart pounding. She hadn't seen Ned in over a year. They'd never even met in person. Only letters, promises, hope. And now he was at the center of a storm that could tear the realm apart. She lit a candle and prayed to the old gods. "Bring him home," she whispered. "Bring him back to me." But the gods were silent, and across the sea, another woman prayed to different gods. At Storm's End, a corpse bled on the stones. Robert Baratheon's body was found by Sir Davos Seaworth. The note he left was simple. She chose him. Stannis read it without blinking. Then, without a word, walked to the courtyard and began organizing troops. "We march at dawn," Renly protested. "He's dead. It's over." "No," Stannis growled, jaw clenched. "It's only just begun." Robert's death shattered the rebellion. Some lords fell into despair. Others, like the Tyrells, looked for new allies. But Stannis, he saw an opening. If the Mad King was dead, if Rhaegar was now king, then the realm needed order. law, justice, and in his mind, he was the only man left who could bring it. Back in King's Landing, Ned sat alone in the Tower of the Hand. He hadn't asked for the position. Rhaegar had named him Hand of the King 2 days after the killing. "You've earned it," he said, voice heavy with sorrow. "You did what I couldn't." But Ned didn't feel honored. He felt cursed. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Aerys's face twisted in madness. Every night, he heard the crackle of flames, the creak of levers almost pulled, the distant screams that could have come from thousands of innocents. And now, the city looked to him for order. Jon Arryn had refused to join the new regime. "You've become what you hated," he told Ned in a cold letter. "Don't write me again, Robert was dead." Catelyn was silent. And the North was divided. Many northern lords stood by Ned, proud that one of their own had helped shape history. But others whispered betrayal, that he had turned against Robert, that he had dishonored his father, that he had stayed in King's Landing too long and left his soul behind. And then came the knock. He opened the door, and there she stood, Lyanna, alive, pale, beautiful, worn, with Rhaegar behind her and in her arms. "A child, you still watching? Because what comes next is where the game really begins." The boy was barely weeks old. Brown hair, Targaryen eyes. No name yet. Rhaegar wouldn't speak of it. But Ned knew. He looked at Lyanna and she nodded. The child was his nephew. The child was also the true heir to the Iron Throne. But Rhaegar sat on it now. And his enemies were closing in. So Ned made a choice. He bent down, took the child in his arms, and whispered the same promise he would make years later, on another bed of blood. "I'll protect him. I swear it. I'll protect him. I swear it." The child was too quiet. Ned Stark had seen newborns before, loud, wrinkled, squirming bundles of life. But this boy, Lyanna's son, stared at him with eyes too sharp for his size. Violet eyes, Targaryen eyes. He didn't cry. He didn't fuss. He simply looked, as if he knew. Rhaegar stood across the room, arms folded behind his back, staring out the tower window toward the Red Keep. He hadn't spoken much since naming Ned Hand. He hadn't spoken at all about the child. Not even his name, and Lyanna. Lyanna was pale and tired. Alive, yes, but no longer the wildflower from Winterfell. There was something distant in her eyes now. Grief, perhaps, or guilt. Ned held the boy tighter and broke the silence. "What will you call him?" Rhaegar's reflection in the glass didn't move. His voice, when it came, was low and careful. "That depends. On what? On whether he lives long enough to be known." Okay, pause. Did that chill your bones too? Because here's where the tension climbs off the charts. Across the narrow sea, Queen Rhaella Targaryen's fleet finally made landfall at the Stormlands. And with her came a court of fire and fury. She arrived not as a grieving widow, but as a challenger. With her rode the remaining loyalists, old knights who still burned for the Targaryen name, gold cloaks who fled the capital after Aerys's death, even exiled lords from the free cities, lured by whispers of chaos and a chance at power. At her side was young Viserys, clothed in red and black silks, told every night by his mother that the throne was stolen from him. And Rhaella. She played the widow, yes, but behind her eyes burned ambition. She sent ravens to the Vale, to the Reach, to the Westerlands. "My son is the true heir. Rhaegar has betrayed his house." He stood idle while his father was murdered. He watched as his sister birthed a bastard under his roof. He is no king, he is a traitor. The realm had barely healed from one rebellion, and now it stood on the brink of another. And in King's Landing, chaos bloomed like wildfire beneath the stone. Every noble house had sent envoys. The throne room saw more debate in 2 weeks than it had in 2 decades. Some supported Rhaegar, believing his vision of reform, of peace, stability, healing. Others saw weakness, a man who let his father die, a man who chose love over duty, a man who allowed a northerner, Ned Stark, to carry his blade into the heart of the royal family. Worse, the rumors began that the child Lyanna carried wasn't Rhaegar's, that Ned had killed the king to hide his own shame, that a Stark now fathered a Targaryen heir. And who do you think started those whispers? Cersei Lannister. Yes, she was still there, still in the Red Keep, still watching, still plotting. Her twin brother Jaime had grown quiet, changed by the night the Mad King nearly destroyed the city. He rarely spoke of that day, only that Ned had saved them all. But Cersei didn't care about Ned's honor. She cared about her family's power, and Rhaegar had taken it. So she set her eyes on another prize. She visited Lyanna in secret. Sweet words, soft voice. She brought honeyed wine and embroidered clothes for the baby. And always behind her smile was poison. They say your son is the prince that was promised, Cersei whispered, running a hand over the child's head. But I wonder, promised to who? Lyanna said nothing. But later that night, the baby's nursemaid was found dead, poisoned. Meanwhile, Ned could feel his world closing in. The city was not his. The court was not his. Even his own name, Stark, began to sound like a curse in the halls of power. He'd sent word to his father and Brandon. Rhaegar had freed them, true to his word. But the North was cold to his actions. Rickard Stark sent no raven in return, and Ned? He wanted nothing more than to leave. To ride for Winterfell. To forget this throne, this war, this cursed place of fire and lies, but he couldn't, because of the child, because of Jon. Yes, that was the name he gave him, whispered in the dark when Lyanna wouldn't say one. Not Aemon, not Egon, not Visenya's ghost, just Jon, a name of the North, he'd told Rhaegar. Rhaegar had said nothing, and then vanished from court for 3 days. Wait, what? Yeah, Rhaegar disappeared. And when he returned, he came back with 3 dragons. No, not literal dragons, but the Kingsguard, Sir Arthur Dayne, Sir Oswell Went, and Sir Gerald Hightower. They had been guarding something. Or someone. At the Tower of Joy. When Rhaegar returned, he called a private meeting with Ned. No advisors, no guards. Just the 2 of them, beneath the weight of too much blood. I want you to take him, Rhaegar said. Ned frowned. Take Jon? To the North. Raise him as your own. Hide him? What are you talking about? He's your son, the heir. Rhaegar shook his head. The realm will never accept him. My mother will see him dead. The lords will call him a bastard. Lyanna will never be safe here. And you... He paused. You're the only man left I trust, Ned wanted to argue. Wanted to scream, but deep down he knew. He'd killed a king to protect the realm. Now he would have to lie to it too. But before Ned could leave King's Landing, everything exploded. Queen Rhaella's fleet had landed at Dragonstone, but her ravens had reached Casterly Rock, and Tywin Lannister finally made his move. You still here? Because what happens next? Here's betrayal on a scale you've never imagined. Tywin, seeing the crown split between Rhaegar and Rhaella, made his choice. He sent a gift to King's Landing, a 12 chests. Inside the heads of Rhaella's envoys, pickled in tar, their tongues ripped out. His message. Simple. The Lannisters backed the true king. The rest are traitors. But Tywin didn't mean Rhaegar. No, he meant Viserys. He meant to put a boy king on the throne, a puppet he could control. And with Rhaella behind him, he would rule the realm from the shadows. Jaime begged him to reconsider. Cersei smiled. And Ned? Ned realized he had to run. He packed in the dead of night. Took Lyanna. Took Jon. Took Sir Howland Reed and a handful of men he trusted. They fled the city in secret. But before they could escape the gates, the bells began to ring. Not for war, for coronation. The boy was only 6. But Viserys Targaryen had just been crowned King of the 7 Kingdoms by order of Tywin Lannister and Rhaegar, imprisoned in the Red Keep. The war wasn't over, it had just begun. The war wasn't over, it had just begun. The cold wind bit through Ned Stark's cloak as he rode through the riverlands under cover of night. His horse was exhausted, so was he. But stopping meant death, maybe not for him, but for the baby wrapped tightly in Lyanna's arms, his tiny breath fogging in the chilled air. Every hoofbeat sounded like betrayal. Behind him, the 7 kingdoms burned with lies and crowns. Ahead of him, home seemed farther than it ever had. Winterfell had always been a place of truth, of roots of the old gods. But now Ned rode not as a son of the North, not as the hand of the king, not even as a Stark. He was something. Worse, he was a fugitive, and the boy in his sister's arms. The boy no one could know. Existed. Was at the center of a storm that would swallow them all. Jon, meanwhile, the Iron Throne had a new occupant, Viserys Targaryen, crowned by the High Septon, clothed in red and gold, a boy trembling beneath the weight of a kingdom he didn't understand. His crown was too large, his voice too small. He couldn't reach the arms of the throne without help. But that didn't matter, because Tywin Lannister sat behind him. He didn't wear a crown. He didn't need to. Every decree Viserys made was whispered by Cersei. Every signature was placed by Grand Maester Pycelle. Every order enforced by Goldcloaks who now answered to the lion, not the dragon. And Rhaegar, the once prince, sat in the black cells of the Red Keep. No trial, no visitors. Just the stone walls, his guilt, and the ghosts of his father. Okay, pause, let's talk stakes. We now have a secret heir in hiding, a usurped king in chains. A puppet child on the throne, the Starks branded traitors, the Lannisters pulling every string. Still with me? Because this next twist will punch you in the gut. Cersei visited the cells often, not to mock Rhaegar. Not at first. She came in silk gowns, her hair coiled like a queen, her voice soft and full of venom. "You were always beautiful," she told Rhaegar. "Even when you ignored me. Even when you chose the wolf girl over me. But now look at you. A prince of dirt, a king of nothing." Rhaegar said nothing. "Do you want to know what Viserys asked me today?" she continued. "He asked if I would be his queen when he comes of age. Isn't that sweet? A lion and a dragon ruling together. Imagine that." Still Rhaegar said nothing, so she leaned in closer and whispered, "I said yes." Back on the road, Ned's escape wasn't going unnoticed. At River Run, Hoster Tully received a raven bearing the king's seal. Ned Stark is to be arrested on sight. The child he carries is a threat to the realm. Hoster didn't send the raven north, instead he burned it. Then he called for his daughter, Catelyn. She arrived pale and confused, still in mourning robes. Robert's death had shattered her world, but this order to destroy the man who was meant to be her husband. Hoster didn't ask for her opinion. He gave her a choice. You can pretend you don't know him, Cat, or you can go to him. But if you do, understand this, you may never come back. She didn't hesitate. And across the Vale, Jon Arryn found himself cornered. He had refused to bend the knee to Rhaegar. Now Viserys wore the crown, and ravens demanded his loyalty. He didn't trust Tywin. He despised the idea of a boy king controlled by lions. But he also knew war would bleed the realm again, and this time it would not be clean. He called for young Robert Arryn, looked into the boy's sickly, innocent eyes, and made a decision. "I will kneel," he told his wife, "but only until the storm passes." And then he began writing secret letters. In the west, Cersei began to reshape the court. Those loyal to Rhaegar were quietly removed. Some sent away, others never seen again. One night a fire broke out in the Great Sept. The High Septon, who had crowned both Rhaegar and Viserys, was found dead in the ashes. A new Septon was chosen. One who owed Tywin everything, and in the darkness beneath the Red Keep, Rhaegar Targaryen received a visitor he never expected, Jaime Lannister. "You're quiet." "Prince." Rhaegar didn't look up. Jaime leaned against the cold wall. "I remember when I thought you were a god." Rhaegar the beautiful, the noble, the silver prince who played harp and killed with sorrow in his eyes. He chuckled bitterly. "You killed the war before it began. You could have stopped all of this." "I tried," Rhaegar said finally. His voice was hollow. "I tried to make a better world. A world without fire and madness." "And what did you get for it?" Jaime asked. "Chains." They sat in silence. Then Jaime said, "They're going to execute you." Rhaegar didn't respond. "I can't stop it," Jaime said. "But I can get a message out. To your sister." "Or your son?" "No," Jaime looked at him, surprised. "Let it die with me," Rhaegar said. "The prophecy, the throne. Let the realm forget the dragon. Maybe then they'll find peace." Jaime didn't agree, but he didn't argue. Elsewhere, Ned Stark met someone he never thought he'd see again. Catelyn. She found him near Maidenpool, under a false name, camped beside a river. When she rode up, he didn't believe it was really her. Not at first. Then she spoke. "You're worse than the stories," she said. "You didn't just betray the crown. You betrayed me." Ned didn't flinch. "I never wanted this," he said quietly. They argued. Of course they did. She didn't understand the lies. The child. The throne. Why he wouldn't come home, and then she saw the baby. Jon tiny, peaceful, wrapped in a direwolf cloak, and suddenly she did understand. "I see," she whispered. "He's hers." Ned nodded. "Not yours." Another nod. But Catelyn's eyes didn't soften. "You're still raising him. I swore I would." She turned away, but didn't leave. "And now, you're not ready for this next part." Because far across the world, in the hot sands of Dorne, a raven arrived at Sunspear. It carried one word, Elia, and Oberyn Martell read it with shaking hands. The message was clear. His sister's killer was still alive, and the man who allowed it, Tywin Lannister, now ruled Westeros. Through a child king Oberyn didn't write. Back he called his spears and prepared for war. The shadows of dawn stretched long across the riverlands as Ned Stark and Catelyn moved under cover of mist, their horses wet with sweat, their faces hollow with exhaustion. Jon, cradled in Catelyn's arms now, slept soundly. Too young to know he was already at the center of a war that had not yet been named. They couldn't ride for Winterfell. Not yet. The north was being watched. Every road that led home was rumored to hold gold cloaks, Lannister men or worse, sellswords with empty purses and eyes hungry for royal blood. So they rode east. To a place most had forgotten, the ruins of Sow's Horn, once a minor holdfast, now nothing more than collapsed stone and tangled woods. No lords, no banners, just silence and secrets. Meanwhile, across the mountains, the banners of House Martell were rising like the sun. From Sunspear to Starfall, every spear in Dawn was being sharpened. Not for glory, not for justice, but for vengeance. Because Prince Oberyn Martell had received more than just one raven. The second one carried the truth. Elia, his sister, had been cast aside by the Targaryens. Her marriage to Rhaegar dissolved in all but name. Her children removed from succession. Her honor shattered when Lyanna Stark emerged with a child born of royal blood. And now Viserys, Elia's son in all but name, sat on the throne under the Lannisters' leash. Oberyn spat on the sand. He called his captains, gathered his spies, and sent a simple message to the other great houses. Dawn remembers. Okay, stop. Feel that? That low tension buzzing in the air? Because we're about to hit a boiling point. Back in King's Landing, the Red Keep wore a strange mask. Peace on the surface. Celebrations for young King Viserys, plays, feasts, songs. But underneath? Paranoia, blood, knives hidden in roses. Rhaella ruled from behind the curtain. Her son was too young to understand power. And she had waited too long to let it slip from her hands now. Cersei Lannister, now declared Queen Regent, had other ideas, and she wasn't waiting. Late one night, she summoned Maester Qyburn. Officially, he was a healer from the Citadel, expelled for unorthodox practices. Unofficially, he was the man who could make things disappear. Diseases, evidence. People. Cersei had one command: kill the wolf girl. Lyanna Stark, still hidden with Ned, had changed. Motherhood did that to her. So did being hunted. She no longer argued with Ned, no longer spoke of Rhaegar. She just watched Jon, fed him, kept him warm. And waited. But in the deep of one night, the air turned wrong. Howland Reed noticed it first. No birds, no wind. Then, movement. 3 men, cloaked in grey, moved like shadows through the ruins of Sow's Horn, silent, blades ready. Ned had only seconds to act. He rolled from his bed, sword in hand, heart pounding. Catelyn grabbed the baby, ducking beneath a stone slab. Howland struck first, his spear catching one man, through the thigh, but the second assassin found Lyanna Steele. Flashed, blood sprayed the stone. Ned screamed. But it wasn't Lyanna who fell, it was Catelyn. The dagger meant for Lyanna struck her back as she shielded Jon with her body. She didn't cry out, she just collapsed. Blood seeping into her dress, lips parting in disbelief, and Lyanna, silent, eyes wide, grabbed the child and ran. Wait, what? Yeah, that just happened. Cat Stark stabbed protecting the son of the woman who shattered her marriage. Let that sit for a second. Howland killed the last assassin. Ned dropped to his knees beside Catelyn, shaking her, begging the gods, begging anyone to give him time. But the light was already fading from her eyes. Her last words, keep him safe, or none of this was worth it. Then, silence. They buried her before sunrise. No markings, no fire. Only stone. And from that moment Lyanna changed. No more softness. She no longer called the baby Jon. She called him Aemon, the name Rhaegar wanted. Ned didn't argue. He just watched her, and felt the ice in her veins begin to form in his own. Back in the capital, Tyrion Lannister returned to the game. He had been traveling Essos, under the guise of diplomacy, but he'd learned more than anyone expected. He returned to King's Landing, not with soldiers, but with secrets he knew about the Dornish movement. He knew the truth about Jon's parentage, and most of all, he knew what his father had done to Rhaegar. And Tyrion, he hated secrets he didn't control, so he made a bold move. He visited Rhaegar Targaryen in the Black Cells. "I want to help you," Tyrion said. Rhaegar laughed. "Then give me a sword." "No," Tyrion said. "Give me your son." Rhaegar's smile vanished. "What?" "I can't break you out, not yet, but I can shift the board. The wolves are hiding your son, yes? But wolves are prey. You give me a name, a location, and I give you a future. Why would you help me?" "Because," Tyrion said, leaning in, "when this kingdom falls apart, and it will, I want to be standing next to the man who can pick up the pieces." Rhaegar said nothing. But a week later, Tyrion received a message, a single word: North. And guess what? Tywin never knew, because he was too busy preparing for the arrival of Daenerys Targaryen. Yeah, you read that right. She's alive. In Pentos, the girl with silver hair had grown under the protection of Illyrio Mopatis. But word had reached them that Westeros was cracking. The dragons were gone, yes, but the fire was not. And Illyrio? He was tired of waiting. He put Daenerys on a ship, sent her west, with promises of safety, of truth, of power, and in her hands 3 fossilized dragon eggs, the last gift of Essos, the last gamble of the Targaryen name. Let's recap where we are. Ned and Lyanna are on the run, grieving Catelyn. Hiding Jon Dorne is marching, for Warriella is ruling through Viserys. Groomed by Cersei, Tyrion is playing both sides. Secretly helping Rhaegar and Daenerys is coming. Rhaegar and Daenerys is coming, swirling his wine. Your existence is a threat, and threats don't live long around lions. Rhaegar sipped carefully. Then I'll make myself a sword. Tyrion smiled. You always did speak like a poet, but you've been in this cage too long, dragon. You're not made of fire anymore. You're made of ash. Rhaegar said nothing, but that night he stopped drinking the wine and began scraping the bricks. Meanwhile, in Dorne, the sands began to boil. Prince Doran Martell had always been cautious, calculating. But his younger brother, Oberyn, was the blade the realm forgot it left unsheathed, and now he was marching, 10,000 spears behind him, Zan's spear emptying like a flood. Riders sent to the Reach, to the Stormlands, even to the north, bearing the same message. Dawn marches not for vengeance, but for justice. For Elia, for Rhaegar, for the true heir, and at Oberyn's side, Arianne Martell. Beautiful, bold, trained by poison and politics, and she carried with her a letter signed by Elia herself, before her death, naming Jon Aemon Targaryen as her son's true heir if Rhaegar fell. It wasn't just a war of swords now, it was a war of claims, and the Iron Throne trembled beneath the weight of too many names. Okay, you still with me? Because we're about to witness a death that changes the game completely. At sea, a storm brewed, not in the sky. In the hold of a ship bound for Westeros, Daenerys Stormborn, 14 years old, stared at the waves through salt-blurred eyes. The 3 dragon eggs were locked in a wooden chest below deck, cold, lifeless, but they whispered in her dreams. She was coming to a home she'd never seen, a throne she'd never touched, a brother she didn't remember, and a name that others either hated or wanted to kill for. Her protector, Sir Willem Darry, had grown ill. He coughed blood, slept most days. So when the sails of the Lannister fleet appeared on the horizon, there was no one left to protect. Her Cersei had sent them. She wasn't going to let another Targaryen girl rise from the ashes. She wasn't going to make the same mistake twice. The ship was taken, the crew executed, and when the soldiers stormed below deck to find Daenerys, there was only one thing left, the chest, and it was empty. 2 days later, in the burned-out remains of a fishing village on the eastern shores, a girl walked barefoot through the ashes. Her hair had turned silver-white under the firelight, and in her wake walked a hatchling, wings like black smoke, eyes like dying embers, a dragon, the first in over a century. But back in Westeros, no one knew, not yet. They were too busy watching the Crownlands burn, because Oberyn Martell had struck fast, brutal, unrelenting. He didn't march directly for King's Landing. That would have been suicide. He marched for Dragonstone, the symbolic seat of House Targaryen. He took it in a single night. The garrison surrendered when he hoisted the banner of Rhaegar from the battlements. It wasn't just a victory, it was a message. The Targaryen line still lived, and within King's Landing, that victory caused the first true fracture. Jaime Lannister, once a Kingsguard, now a commander of the City Watch, refused to arrest Tyrion when ordered by Queen Regent Cersei. "You're protecting traitors," she hissed. "I'm protecting my brother," he replied. "And maybe the last good man in this city." Tywin summoned him. Demanded he choose. Jaime didn't speak, he just walked away. And then came the trial. Rhaegar Targaryen, brought from his cell in chains, before a court filled with Lannister allies and spineless lords. Queen Rhaella sat at Viserys' side, her expression frozen in contempt. Tyrion watched silently. From the balcony, the High Septon began the charges: treason, conspiracy, usurpation, endangering the realm. But before the trial could truly begin, a man stepped forward, grey-beard, dark robes, tired eyes. Howland Reed Ned had sent him, with a single truth, a sealed letter written in Rhaegar's hand, dated before the war ended, naming Jon Aemon Targaryen as his legitimate heir, born of Lyanna Stark under the rights of... Don't the hall erupted. Tywin stood. "Cersei," screamed. Rhaella demanded silence, but it was too late. The truth was out. Rhaegar didn't look relieved. He looked heartbroken, because he knew what that letter meant. Not salvation, not freedom, but war back in the north. Ned stared into the crypts of Winterfell. They had finally returned, hidden, masked, quiet. Jon slept in a cradle beside the statue of Lyanna, as the real Lyanna whispered her apologies to the shadows. And Ned, he held something in his hand, a letter from Tyrion Lannister. Only 5 words. "I did what I could." Attached was another sealed note. This one, from Jon Arryn. It was older, torn, smudged with ink and wine, but its contents, they would break Ned's soul, because it named the man who had betrayed them all from the beginning, the man who lied about Rhaegar, lied about Lyanna, lied about Elia, a man no one suspected until now. Peter Baelish. The letter slipped from Ned Stark's hand and landed at the base of the cold stone statue of his sister, Peter Baelish. The name hit him like a hammer to the chest. Of all the players in this game of fire and blood, he had never imagined Littlefinger to be at the center of it, but Jon Arryn had known. Before he died, before they silenced him, he had traced the lies, the poison, the letters sent from the Vale, from the capital, from the very rooms where Catelyn once trusted a childhood friend. Peter had orchestrated the war. Peter had stoked Robert's fury over Lyanna's kidnapping. Peter had whispered truths into Tywin's ears. And now, somewhere in the Vale, he sat untouched, feeding ravens and sipping sweet arbor wine, while the realm tore itself apart over lies he built. Ned clenched his jaw. This would not stand. Not now. Not ever. But vengeance had to wait, because Jon was changing. It began with dreams, wolves, snow, wings of shadow, a tree with eyes, a throne of ice. At first Ned thought it was just fever, but then the cradle caught fire. No spark, no flint, just sudden heat. Jon's eyes opened, and they glowed, if only for a moment, with a golden shimmer. Lyanna saw it too. She didn't scream, she just whispered, "He has the dragon in him." And Ned remembered the way wildfire had danced through the halls of the Red Keep, how the Mad King laughed at the smell of burning flesh, how Rhaegar spoke of prophecy, of rebirth, of a song of ice and fire. Ned had never believed in destiny. But Jon was becoming something else. Down in King's Landing, the city stood on the edge of another civil war. The public now knew of Jon. The rumor spread like wildfire. Some believed he was a bastard. Others, the second coming of the conqueror. Most just terrified. A baby with a dragon's name and northern blood. The faith began to question Viserys' rule. Oberyn Martell declared Jon the only rightful heir, and in the shadows, Varys returned. No one saw how. No one knew from where. But one morning there he was, standing in Tywin Lannister's solar like he'd never left. "I have seen kings come and go," he said smoothly. "But the boy, he is different." Tywin narrowed his eyes. "He is a threat," or Varys said softly, "a weapon." At the same time, across the narrow sea, Daenerys was no longer running. She was hunting. Her hatchling, Drogon, had grown quickly, still small but no longer helpless. His wings could glide. His fire could kill. And with every passing day, Dany felt herself changing too. She was not afraid of the dragon. She was the dragon. Word of her survival had reached Westeros. And now, 3 sellsword companies, Golden Company included, began debating contracts not for gold, but for her cause. Illyrio Mopatis met with her in secret. "You have blood on both sides of the throne," he said. "Targaryen and Stormborn. The people will follow you." "They will fear me first," Dany replied. "Then they will follow." But back in the Vale, the spider's web began to unravel. Sansa Stark, hidden away in the eyrie under the name Elaine, received a letter by Raven, written in her father's hand. One word: run. She didn't hesitate. She fled the eyrie that night with the help of Lysa Arryn's maid, a woman who claimed to be loyal to House Stark since the rebellion. But someone followed her. Someone small, quiet, always watching. Petter Baelish. He caught her on the cliffside path. "No guards, just wind and stone. You're leaving me?" he asked softly. "Just like your mother." "I'm not my mother," Sansa spat. "And you're not my friend," Littlefinger smiled. "Perhaps not. But I did give your family a war, didn't I?" He stepped forward. She stepped back, too close to the edge. "Let me go," she whispered. He raised a hand, then an arrow through his throat. Blood sprayed. Littlefinger fell, gasping, and behind him stood Arya Stark, face dirty, eyes cold, needle strapped to her belt. "You talk too much," she said. "Oh, you felt that, right? Because the wolves are returning to the game." Elsewhere in Westeros, a fire lit the skies. Dragonstone burned. Tywin had sent ships to retake it from Dorne, but Drogon struck from above. Black wings. Red fire. The storm of flame tore through sails and screams. Only one ship returned. The captain's hair had turned white from the fear. "The girl." "She rode it," he whispered. "She rode the dragon like it was part of her. The realm had tried to bury dragons, but now they flew again, and the world would burn for it." Back in Winterfell, Ned gathered the last names he trusted. Howland Reed, Benjen Stark, Mage Mormont, even the wild-haired bastard of Carhold, and he said the words he never thought he'd say. We marched south. With the boy, he would not hide Jon anymore. He would not watch another king be crowned while the realm drowned in lies. He would not wait for fire to come to his doorstep. The North would rise, but not for vengeance, for truth, and for the child who could no longer be denied. The wind howled through the trees as the North moved south once more, not for rebellion, not for conquest, but for something older, deeper. Truth. Ned Stark rode at the head of a small host, cloaked not in banners but in silence. They passed through forgotten paths and frost-bitten forests, moving beneath the eyes of gods carved into trees. And with him rode his last hope, and his greatest burden, Jon, now walking, talking, dreaming in strange tongues. A child of both wolf and dragon, and something more. Lyanna rode beside them, her face harder now. The last time she'd crossed these roads, she'd been a girl carried away by love. Now she was a mother riding toward war. The boy was speaking of wings again and shadows in his dreams. Ned didn't sleep anymore, not because of fear, but because he finally believed in prophecy. In King's Landing, the game was collapsing. Viserys sat the throne, but he no longer ruled. His mother, Queen Rhaella, had fallen ill, some said poisoned. Others whispered curses from Dorne. She no longer spoke, no longer walked. And the boy king was unraveling. He screamed at courtiers, beat his handmaidens, killed a raven because it looked at him wrong. Tywin tried to manage him. Cersei tried to seduce his will. But a child burning with power he didn't understand. He couldn't be managed. Viserys had begun to speak of fire, of dragons, of burning the north before it rose, and of kings made of shadow and snow, and beneath the city, Rhaegar Targaryen vanished. The day of his execution came. The square was filled. The blade was ready, but the prisoner was gone, no trace. No blood, no broken locks, only a single feather in the black cell where he once slept. Rumors spread like flame in dry grass. Some said he flew. Others said he died days before and a body double was slain in his place. But the truth rode west, and it had silver hair, tired eyes, and a fire that had not gone out. And across the narrow sea, Daenerys crossed into Westeros. She did not come with an army. She came with a dragon, and the dragon came with fire. The Reach burned first. A minor house loyal to the Lannisters refused her entry, so she burned the gates. Then she sent a raven with 3 words. "I am home." The Iron Throne ignored it. That was a mistake, because 2 nights later, she rode Drogon to the skies above King's Landing, not to attack, to be seen. Black wings, red flame, and no chains. The realm looked up and remembered the past. Let's pause because right now, we've got Ned and Jon marching toward the capital. Rhaegar returned from the dead, sort of. Dany igniting rebellion from above. The Lannister regime crumbling. The last secrets about to be revealed, and Peter Baelish. He's still out there, but not for long. Watched it all from the shadows of Harrenhal, his last safe haven. The letters he sent went unanswered. The lords he'd bought turned their backs. The storm had grown too wild. And now Arya Stark hunted him, he knew it. He could feel her. Like a wolf's breath in the night, the girl he once overlooked. The girl who had already killed him once in another life. This time he ran, but Arya, she didn't chase, she simply waited. He came to the gates of King's Landing dressed as a merchant. She slit his throat before the guards saw his face. No trial, no speeches, just the end of lies. In the Red Keep, chaos reached its breaking point. Tyrion resigned. He left the council chambers without a word, a cup of wine in his hand, and boarded a ship to meet Daenerys. He would offer her the last gift he had, the map of the Red Keep, and finally, the march ended. Ned Stark rode through the King's Gate, a direwolf banner flying above for the first time in over a decade. He came with no army, only the truth. He walked into the throne room with Jon at his side, and Viserys, crown crooked, eyes bloodshot, stared down at them like a cornered animal. "You brought the bastard here?" he hissed. "To take my throne." Ned didn't flinch. "He's not here for the throne. He's here for the truth," Viserys screamed, drew a blade. But before steel could clash, the doors exploded open, and through the smoke and fire walked Rhaegar, alive, armor, black as night, sigil of the three-headed dragon. Sword at his hip, Jon's eyes lit up. Viserys dropped his blade, and Rhaegar, he didn't look at the throne. He looked at his son and said the words that sealed fate. "It was never mine." Cersei screamed for guards. Tywin tried to speak, but neither mattered, because at that moment, the sky shook. Drogon descended, Daenerys on his back. Wings spread over the Red Keep like the shadow of fate, and behind her, the people marching, chanting, crying. They had chosen not a king, not a queen, but a future. The throne room cracked, the fire spread, and Jon stepped forward, but didn't claim the throne. He looked at Daenerys, looked at his father, looked at the ruins of what once was, and he burned the Iron Throne with his own hands with a whisper in Valyrian, and fire answered. The game ended. No throne, no crown, no ruler, but a council built of houses who chose peace. Rhaegar returned to Dragonstone. Daenerys flew north to rebuild what fire had taken. Ned returned to Winterfell. And Jon, he walked into the snow and vanished. Some say he died, others say he found the heart of the north, where the old gods whispered in wind. But some nights, under the cold moonlight, a dragon is seen gliding over the wall, and the people say, "The prince that was promised? He never needed a crown, only the choice not to wear one."